Have you noticed that the advice about how to stay healthy seems to change every few years? What was once considered essential for well-being is later questioned, and what was once avoided is later embraced. This constant shifting leaves many people uncertain about what truly matters. But beneath all the changing recommendations, there is something more reliable to pay attention to. Your body has been communicating with you your entire life, sending signals about what it needs and what it struggles with. The question is not whether new research will confirm this or that diet, but whether you have learned to understand what your body is already telling you. Today, we are going to explore what happens when we stop trying to override the body's wisdom and instead learn to work with it. You are listening to the Longevity Library, where we archive the wisdom of healthy aging. The art of living well. Understanding the body's wisdom across the years. There is a question that lingers in the background of many conversations about health, though it is rarely asked directly. It has to do with why some people seem to move through the decades with relative ease, while others find themselves increasingly limited by their bodies. The difference is often attributed to luck or genetics. But observers of human health across cultures and throughout history have noticed something else. There are patterns, consistent ways of living that appear again and again among those who maintain their vitality well into later life. These patterns have nothing to do with the latest supplements or exercise trends. They are older than that, rooted in a kind of practical wisdom that the body itself has always understood. The body is not a machine that simply wears out over time, though this is a common way of thinking about aging. Machines degrade through use, their parts growing thinner and weaker until they eventually fail. The body does something entirely different. It responds to how it is treated by constantly rebuilding itself, adapting to the demands placed upon it, and maintaining an intricate internal communication system that coordinates everything from digestion to mood to immune function. This process of constant renewal continues throughout life, which means that how the body functions at any age is not simply the result of accumulated years, but the result of how those years have been lived. What follows is an exploration of the principles that support this ongoing renewal. These are not rules to be followed rigidly, but observations about how the body works and what it needs to function well. They emerge from looking at human health across different cultures and time periods, from understanding the basic biology that underlies everyday experience, and from recognizing that the body's wisdom is often simpler than we imagine. The body's internal communication system. Before considering specific practices, it helps to understand something about how the body organizes itself. The human body contains trillions of cells, each carrying out thousands of chemical reactions every second. For all of this activity to be coordinated, there must be constant communication between cells, between tissues, and between organs. This communication happens through multiple channels, some of them well mapped by science and others still being explored. One of the most important communication pathways involves the nervous system, which transmits electrical signals at remarkable speed. Another involves hormones, chemical messengers that travel through the bloodstream to influence cells throughout the body. More recently, researchers have come to appreciate the role of the microbiome, the vast community of microorganisms that lives in and on the human body. These microbes produce their own chemical signals that influence everything from digestion to mood to immune function. What is particularly interesting about this communication system is that it is bidirectional. The brain sends signals to the gut, which is why stress can cause digestive upset. But the gut also sends signals to the brain, which is why what we eat can affect how we feel mentally and emotionally. The same principle applies throughout the body. Every part influences every other part, which means that supporting health in one area tends to support health everywhere. This interconnectedness explains why simple approaches often work better than complicated ones, when the body's communication systems are functioning well. Small positive changes can have ripple effects. A walk outdoors, for example, affects the cardiovascular system, the musculoskeletal system, the nervous system, and even the microbiome through changes in breathing and circulation. The body responds as a whole because it operates as a whole. The foundation of daily movement. Among the oldest observations about human health is that people who remain physically active tend to maintain their function longer than those who become sedentary. This is so consistently observed across populations that it qualifies as one of the few true certainties in health research. But what counts as physical activity, and how much is enough, are questions that have generated considerable discussion. The body is designed for frequent, low-intensity movement throughout the day, not just for brief periods of high-intensity exercise. This distinction is important because modern life has largely eliminated the need for constant low-level activity. Chairs, cars, and remote controls have made it possible to move very little while still accomplishing everything necessary for daily life. The body interprets this lack of movement as a signal that certain tissues are not needed, and it begins to reduce its investment in them. Muscle tissue is particularly responsive to this signal. When muscles are not used regularly, the body gradually breaks them down, reallocating the resources they would have required to other functions. This process, if uninterrupted, leads to a gradual loss of strength and mobility that can eventually make movement difficult. The irony is that this difficulty then leads to even less movement, creating a downward spiral that is hard to reverse. The solution is not necessarily to join a gym or follow a structured exercise program, though these can certainly help. The more fundamental need is to reintroduce movement into the ordinary moments of the day. Standing instead of sitting when possible, walking short distances instead of driving, taking stairs instead of elevators, doing household tasks manually instead of outsourcing them. These small choices, repeated hundreds of times over weeks and months, send a consistent signal to the body that movement is still required. There is also value in activities that challenge balance and coordination. Walking on uneven ground, for example, engages stabilizing muscles that sitting on an exercise machine never touches. Gardening requires bending, reaching, and twisting in ways that maintain range of motion. Carrying groceries strengthens grip and challenges postural muscles. These activities may not look like exercise in the conventional sense, but they provide the kind of varied, functional movement that the body evolved to perform. For those who prefer more structured activity, research suggests that a combination of walking, strength work, and balance training provides broad coverage of the body's needs. Walking maintains cardiovascular function and weight-bearing bones. Strength work, which can be as simple as bodyweight exercises like squats and push-ups, maintains muscle mass and metabolic function. Balance training, which might include standing on one foot while brushing teeth or practicing Tai Chi, reduces the risk of falls and maintains the communication between nerves and muscles. The key principle is consistency rather than intensity. A moderate amount of movement most days produces greater long-term benefits than occasional intense workouts followed by periods of inactivity. The body responds to regular signals much more effectively than to sporadic ones. The question of food and its timing. Food provides the raw materials for everything the body does. The proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals consumed are broken down and reassembled into the structures and signals that keep the body functioning. Given this fundamental role, it is not surprising that what people eat has been a focus of health observation for as long as humans have recorded such things. But the question of what to eat has become extraordinarily complicated in recent decades. Conflicting studies, changing recommendations, and the constant introduction of new products have left many people uncertain about even basic choices. Stepping back from this confusion, some clearer patterns emerge. One pattern involves the degree to which foods are processed. Traditional diets around the world vary enormously in their specific foods, but they share a common characteristic. The foods eaten are recognizable as having come from plants or animals, and they are prepared in ways that have been used for generations. Modern industrial processing creates foods that are structurally different from anything the body encountered during its evolution, and the body responds to these differences in ways that are still being understood. Highly processed foods tend to be absorbed quickly, causing rapid changes in blood sugar and insulin. They often contain combinations of fat, sugar, and salt that are rarely found together in nature, which may disrupt the body's natural appetite regulation. They typically lack the fiber and other compounds that slow digestion and provide food for beneficial gut bacteria. Over time, a diet built around such foods appears to contribute to a range of metabolic and inflammatory conditions. Another pattern involves the variety of plant foods consumed. Traditional diets often included dozens of different plant species over the course of a year, many of them gathered from the immediate environment. Modern diets, by contrast, tend to rely on a small number of staple crops. This reduction in variety means a reduction in the range of phytochemicals, the compounds plants produce to protect themselves, that reach the human body. These compounds have diverse effects on human biology, many of them beneficial, and consuming a wide range of them appears to support health in ways that are difficult to achieve through supplements. A third pattern concerns the timing of food intake. The human body evolved in environments where food was not constantly available. Periods of eating were naturally followed by periods of not eating, and the body adapted to this pattern. Digestive organs rest between meals. The liver processes stored energy, and cellular cleanup processes become more active. Modern eating patterns, with food available at all times and snacking common throughout the day, eliminate these fasting periods entirely. Some researchers suggest that restoring a daily period of not eating, perhaps 12 hours or more, allows the body to perform maintenance functions that are difficult to complete when digestion is always active. The specific foods that support health are less mysterious than they are sometimes made to appear. Vegetables of all colors, fruits in their whole form, legumes, nuts, seeds, animal foods from well-raised sources, fermented foods that provide beneficial bacteria, and water as the primary beverage. These foods, in combinations that vary by culture and preference, have supported human health for thousands of years. The challenge in modern times is not discovering what to eat, but maintaining access to these foods and the time to prepare them in a world organized around convenience and speed. The digestive system as a gateway. The digestive tract is the interface between the outside world and the internal environment of the body. Everything eaten must be broken down into molecules small enough to pass through the intestinal lining and enter the bloodstream, while simultaneously being screened for harmful substances that should be kept out. This dual role, allowing entry while preventing invasion, makes the digestive system central to overall health. The process begins in the mouth, where chewing breaks food into smaller pieces and mixes it with enzymes that begin digesting starches. The stomach continues the process, using acid and enzymes to break down proteins and kill most microorganisms that enter with food. The small intestine completes digestion and absorbs nutrients, while the large intestine processes what remains and houses the majority of the body's microbial population. For this system to work well, each part must function properly and in coordination with the others. When one part is compromised, the effects ripple through the rest. Low stomach acid, for example, means that proteins are not fully broken down and more bacteria survive to reach the small intestine. These surviving bacteria can multiply in the small intestine, where they ferment carbohydrates and produce gas, causing bloating and discomfort. They can also interfere with nutrient absorption and trigger immune responses. Stomach acid production naturally changes with age, and many people take medications that further reduce acid levels. While these medications provide relief from symptoms like heartburn, they may also reduce the stomach's ability to perform its protective functions. The symptoms themselves often result not from too much acid, but from acid being in the wrong place. The valve between the stomach and esophagus can allow acid to splash upward, causing burning sensations even when total acid production is normal or low. Fat digestion depends on bile, a fluid produced by the liver and stored in the gallbladder. Bile is released when fat enters the small intestine, and it acts somewhat like a detergent, breaking fat into small droplets that enzymes can attack. Bile also has antimicrobial properties, helping to keep bacterial populations in the small intestine under control. When fat intake is very low, the gallbladder is not stimulated to release bile regularly, and this antimicrobial effect is reduced. The large intestine contains the vast majority of the body's microbes, a community that weighs several pounds and contains trillions of organisms. These microbes feed on fiber and other carbohydrates that escape digestion in the small intestine. In return, they produce compounds that nourish the cells of the colon, support immune function, and influence metabolism throughout the body. The composition of this microbial community varies greatly between individuals and is influenced by diet, medications, and environment. Supporting digestive health involves providing the conditions each part needs to function. This includes adequate stomach acid for protein digestion and microbial defense, adequate fat to stimulate bile flow when needed, periods without eating to allow the digestive tract to rest and clear debris, and a variety of formidable fibers to feed beneficial large intestinal bacteria. When any of these conditions are missing, digestive problems often follow. The microbial community within. The realization that humans are not solitary organisms, but walking ecosystems has been one of the significant shifts in biological understanding over recent decades. Each person carries a community of microbes that outnumbers their own cells and contains genetic information far exceeding what is in the human genome. This community, acquired at birth and shaped throughout life, participates in nearly every aspect of human biology. These microbes help digest food that human enzymes cannot break down, producing short-chain fatty acids that nourish intestinal cells and influence metabolism. They synthesize certain vitamins, including several B vitamins and vitamin K. They train the immune system from infancy, helping it learn to distinguish between harmless substances and genuine threats. They produce neurotransmitters and other signaling molecules that affect mood and behavior. They even influence how medications are processed and whether they cause side effects. The composition of this microbial community is not random. It is shaped first by birth method, with vaginally delivered infants acquiring different microbes than those born by cesarean section. Breastfeeding continues this inoculation, providing both beneficial bacteria and the sugars that feed them. Throughout life, diet is perhaps the strongest influence, with different foods favoring different microbial populations. Medications, particularly antibiotics, can dramatically alter the community by killing broad swaths of bacteria. Environment matters too, with exposure to soil, animals, and other people introducing new strains. When the microbial community becomes less diverse, or when certain species dominate inappropriately, problems can arise. Some bacteria produce gases that cause bloating and discomfort when they establish themselves in the wrong part of the digestive tract. Others may trigger immune responses that contribute to inflammation. The balance between different types of microbes appears to matter as much as the presence or absence of any particular species. Supporting a healthy microbial community involves several strategies. Eating a variety of plant foods provides different types of fiber that feed different bacterial species. Including fermented foods introduces beneficial microbes directly, though whether these transient visitors establish permanent residence depends on the existing community. Avoiding unnecessary antibiotics preserves the existing community rather than forcing it to rebuild. Spending time outdoors and around other people maintains exposure to environmental microbes that may contribute to diversity. The relationship between humans and their microbes is not static but dynamic. The community changes in response to what the person eats, where they go, what medications they take, and even how much they sleep. This means that supporting microbial health is not a one-time task, but an ongoing process of providing the conditions that allow a diverse and balanced community to thrive. The role of rest and recovery. In cultures organized around productivity, rest is often treated as a luxury or an indulgence. The body, however, treats rest as a necessity. During periods of rest, and particularly during sleep, the body performs maintenance functions that are difficult to complete while awake and active. The brain, for example, clears out metabolic waste products during deep sleep through a recently discovered system called the glymphatic system. This cleaning process is much more active during sleep than during wakefulness, suggesting that one function of sleep is to allow the brain to perform essential housekeeping. Without adequate sleep, this waste can accumulate, potentially interfering with neural function over time. The digestive system also requires rest. The migrating motor complex, a wave of muscular contractions that sweeps through the small intestine, becomes active only when the intestine has been empty for several hours. This cleansing wave pushes debris and bacteria downward into the large intestine, preventing them from accumulating in the small intestine where they do not belong. Frequent eating disrupts this process, keeping the small intestine in a constant state of activity and allowing bacteria to remain in place. Cells throughout the body use rest periods to repair damage, recycle old components, and prepare for the next period of activity. This process, called autophagy, involves breaking down damaged proteins and organelles and using the components to build new ones. Autophagy becomes more active during fasting and in response to certain types of stress, and it appears to be one of the mechanisms by which regular periods of not eating support long-term health. The nervous system similarly requires downtime. Constant stimulation, whether from screens, conversations, or internal worries, keeps stress responses active and prevents the body from returning to a resting state. Chronic activation of stress responses has wide-ranging effects, increasing inflammation, raising blood pressure, and interfering with digestion and sleep. Periods of quiet, whether through meditation, time in nature, or simply sitting without distraction, allow the nervous system to reset. The practical implications of this are simple but often difficult to implement. Protecting sleep means treating it as a priority rather than something to be fit in when everything else is done. Regular periods without food, whether overnight or longer, give the digestive system time to clean and repair. Moments of quiet throughout the day allow the nervous system to settle. These practices do not produce immediate visible results, but over time they create the conditions for the body to maintain itself. The influence of light and daily rhythms. Living things on Earth evolved in the presence of predictable cycles of light and dark. The rotation of the planet creates a 24-hour rhythm that is reflected in the biology of nearly all organisms. From single-celled bacteria to complex mammals, humans are no exception. Nearly every cell in the body contains a molecular clock that tracks time and coordinates activity with the external world. These internal clocks are set primarily by light. Specialized cells in the eyes detect the blue wavelengths present in sunlight and signal to a master clock in the brain, which then synchronizes clocks throughout the body. Morning light advances the clock, helping to set the timing for sleep, hormone release, body temperature, and countless other functions. Evening light, particularly the blue light from screens and artificial lighting, can delay the clock, making it harder to fall asleep at an appropriate time. The consequences of disrupted circadian rhythms extend beyond sleep. When internal clocks are out of sync with the external world, digestion suffers because digestive enzymes and stomach acid are released at the wrong times. Metabolism slows because cells become less sensitive to insulin. Immune function changes, with inflammation increasing. Mood often declines. These effects are most pronounced in shift workers, who experience chronic circadian disruption and show higher rates of many health problems. But they also affect anyone whose light exposure patterns conflict with their internal clocks. Supporting healthy circadian rhythms involves aligning light exposure with natural patterns. Bright light during the morning hours, ideally from sunlight, helps set the clock for the day. Dim light in the evening, with screens dimmed or filtered, allows the body to prepare for sleep. Darkness during sleeping hours, with blackout curtains or eye masks if necessary, supports uninterrupted rest. These practices cost nothing and require no special equipment, yet they have profound effects on how the body functions. Seasonal changes in light also matter. Before electric lighting, humans experience dramatically different light exposure in summer versus winter. Summer brought long days with abundant light, while winter brought long nights and relative darkness. The body responded to these changes with shifts in metabolism, sleep, and mood. Modern environments, with constant artificial light year-round, eliminate these seasonal variations. And some researchers suggest this may contribute to the mismatch between human biology and modern life. Time spent outdoors, regardless of season, provides light exposure that cannot be replicated indoors. Even on cloudy days, outdoor light is much brighter than indoor lighting. This exposure supports circadian rhythms, stimulates vitamin D production when appropriate, and may have other effects through the infrared and ultraviolet spectrums that are only beginning to be studied. The social environment and its effects. Humans evolved as social creatures, living in groups that provided protection, shared resources, and collective knowledge. This social context shaped human biology in fundamental ways. The presence of others influences stress responses, immune function, and even how quickly wounds heal. Loneliness, conversely, is associated with increased inflammation, higher stress hormone levels, and greater risk of many health problems. The mechanisms connecting social connection to physical health are multiple. Supportive relationships provide practical help during difficult times, reducing the need for the body to mount a full stress response. They offer opportunities for conversation and touch, both of which can calm the nervous system. They create a sense of purpose and belonging that appears to have direct biological effects, though the pathways are not fully mapped. Social engagement also keeps the brain active in ways that solitary activities cannot match. Conversation requires rapid processing of language, tone, facial expression, and context, all of which exercise neural circuits. Group activities, whether walking clubs, card games, or volunteer work, combine physical, cognitive, and social engagement simultaneously. These complex activities may be particularly valuable for maintaining cognitive function over time. The quality of relationships matters more than the quantity. A few close, trusted connections provide more support than many superficial ones. Relationships characterized by conflict or criticism can actually increase stress rather than reducing it. The key is not to accumulate social contacts, but to cultivate relationships that feel genuinely supportive. For those whose social circles have shrunk over time, rebuilding connection requires intentional effort. This might mean joining groups organized around interests, volunteering for causes that matter, or simply making regular contact with neighbors and acquaintances. Technology can help maintain long-distance relationships, though in-person contact provides benefits that video calls cannot fully replicate. The goal is not to become endlessly social, but to maintain enough connection that the body does not register isolation as a chronic threat. Purpose and engagement. Beyond social connection, humans need a sense that their lives have meaning and direction. This need is not merely philosophical, but biological. People who report a strong sense of purpose show different patterns of gene expression, lower levels of inflammation, and better maintenance of physical function as they age. They also tend to live longer, an effect that persists even when accounting for other factors like health status and socioeconomic position. Purpose can take many forms. For some, it comes from work or career, whether paid or volunteer. For others, it comes from family, from caregiving roles, from creative expression, from spiritual practice, or from contributing to community. The specific form matters less than the presence of something that feels meaningful enough to get up for in the morning. Engagement with life. The quality of being absorbed in activities that feel worthwhile may be as important as purpose itself. When people are fully engaged in what they are doing, whether gardening, painting, playing music, or solving problems, they enter a state sometimes called flow. This state is associated with positive emotions, reduced stress, and a sense of time passing differently. Regular engagement in absorbing activities appears to support both mental and physical health. The challenge for many people, particularly after retirement or major life transitions, is finding new sources of purpose and engagement when old ones disappear. This requires experimentation, a willingness to try things that may not work out, and patience with the process of discovery. It also requires resisting the cultural message that only paid work or visible achievement counts as meaningful contribution. The small, consistent acts of caring for others, maintaining a garden, or creating something beautiful have their own value, recognized by the body even if not by the broader culture. Adaptation to challenge. The body is designed to respond to challenges. When muscles are loaded, they grow stronger. When balance is tested, coordination improves. When the mind is challenged, neural connections strengthen. This capacity for adaptation, technically called hormesis, is one of the body's most fundamental properties. It means that appropriate stress, rather than being harmful, actually builds resilience. The key word is appropriate. Too little challenge leads to deconditioning, as muscles weaken and coordination declines from disuse. Too much challenge, particularly without adequate recovery, leads to breakdown and injury. The optimal zone lies somewhere in between, where the body is pushed enough to trigger adaptation, but not so much that it cannot recover. This principle applies across multiple domains. Physical challenges like strength training or brisk walking stress muscles and the cardiovascular system, prompting them to adapt and become stronger. Cognitive challenges like learning new skills or solving puzzles stress neural circuits, prompting them to form new connections. Dietary challenges like occasional periods without food stress metabolic pathways, prompting them to become more flexible and efficient. Environmental challenges like cold exposure or heat stress the body's regulatory systems, prompting them to become more robust. The practical implication is that comfort, while pleasant in the moment, may not be optimal for long-term function. A life without any physical demands leads to physical decline. A diet without any periods of scarcity may lead to metabolic inflexibility. A mind without new challenges may gradually lose sharpness. The body needs to be used, stretched, and occasionally stressed to maintain its capacity. This does not mean seeking out suffering or pushing through pain. It means recognizing that appropriate challenges, followed by adequate recovery, are part of how the body stays healthy. A walk that leaves one slightly breathed, a puzzle that requires genuine thought, a day of not eating now and then. These are not punishments, but signals that tell the body to keep its systems active and ready. Environment and exposure. The environment in which people live influences health in ways that are easy to overlook. Air quality, access to nature, noise levels, and even the design of buildings and neighborhoods all affect biology. These factors operate outside individual awareness much of the time, yet they shape what the body experiences day after day. Time spent in natural environments has been consistently associated with positive health outcomes. People who live near parks or green spaces tend to be more physically active. Exposure to trees and vegetation is linked to lower stress levels, as measured by cortisol and other stress markers. Forest bathing, a practice originating in Japan, involves simply spending time in forested areas, and research suggests it has measurable effects on immune function, particularly on the activity of natural killer cells that help fight viruses and tumors. The mechanisms behind these effects are not fully understood. Natural environments may reduce stress by providing a sense of escape from daily demands. They may encourage more physical activity than built environments. They may expose people to beneficial microbes from soil and plants. They may simply provide a different quality of sensory input than the hard surfaces and artificial lighting of urban settings. Whatever the mechanisms, the association between nature exposure and health is consistent enough to warrant attention. Indoor environments matter too. Indoor air can be more polluted than outdoor air, particularly in buildings with poor ventilation or materials that release volatile compounds. Mold and moisture problems affect respiratory health. Noise from traffic or neighbors keeps stress responses active even during sleep. Lighting that is too dim during the day or too bright at night disrupts circadian rhythms. These factors operate below conscious awareness much of the time, yet they create the background conditions within which the body functions. Addressing environmental factors often requires changes beyond individual control, but some steps are possible. Opening windows improves ventilation. Spending time outdoors, even briefly, provides nature exposure and different light. Reducing noise with earplugs or white noise machines protects sleep. Choosing products with fewer synthetic fragrances reduces chemical exposure. These small adjustments shift the environment slightly toward conditions more aligned with human biology. The integration of knowledge. Considering all of these factors together, a pattern emerges. The body functions best when its basic needs are met consistently over time. These needs include movement throughout the day, food that provides a variety of nutrients and supports the microbial community, regular periods of rest and recovery, exposure to natural light and darkness in appropriate rhythms, social connection that feels supportive, engagement in activities that feel meaningful, appropriate challenges that prompt adaptation, and an environment that does not constantly stress regulatory systems. None of these needs is mysterious or difficult to understand. They are the same needs humans have always had. What has changed is the environment in which people live, which now makes meeting these needs more complicated than it once was. Food is abundant but often stripped of the complexity the body expects. Movement is optional in ways it never was before. Light is available at all hours, disrupting internal clocks. Social connection requires more intentional effort when communities are less geographically concentrated. The challenge of maintaining health in this environment is not a challenge of discovering new secrets or following complicated protocols. It is a challenge of arranging life so that basic needs are met despite the obstacles modern living places in the way. This requires attention to how daily choices add up over time, not to whether any single choice is optimal. Walking instead of driving when possible. Choosing whole foods over processed ones. Protecting time for sleep. Spending moments outdoors. Maintaining contact with people who matter. Finding activities that feel worth doing. Allowing the body to experience appropriate challenges. Noticing how different environments affect mood and energy. These small choices, repeated thousands of times, create the conditions within which the body can maintain itself. Moving forward with awareness. The approach to health that emerges from these observations is neither complicated nor restrictive. It does not require giving up foods that bring pleasure, exercising to exhaustion, or following rigid schedules. It requires instead a kind of awareness, a noticing of how the body responds to different conditions and a willingness to adjust when things seem out of balance. This awareness develops over time. It comes from paying attention to how energy levels change with different foods, how mood shifts with light exposure, how digestion responds to meal timing, how sleep quality affects the next day. No book or expert can provide this information because it is specific to each individual. The body communicates its needs constantly, but the signals are easy to ignore in the busyness of daily life. Learning to hear these signals is perhaps the most valuable skill for maintaining health over the long term. It allows for flexibility, for enjoying a rich meal without guilt or a lazy day without shame, while also recognizing when patterns have drifted too far from what the body needs. The body does not demand perfection. It responds to what is done most of the time, not what is done occasionally. The decades of later life offer an opportunity to develop this awareness. With fewer external demands of work and family, there is more time to notice and respond. The body's signals become clearer when they are not drowned out by constant activity. Many people report that this period, far from being a time of decline, becomes a time of deeper connection with themselves and a more comfortable relationship with their own bodies. This is the art of living well across the years, not fighting against time or desperately trying to preserve youth, but learning to work with the body's wisdom, providing what it needs and noticing what it offers in return. The body has been maintaining itself for far longer than any of the current health trends have existed. It knows what to do. The task is simply to create the conditions that allow it to do its work. The single most important idea to carry forward is this: your body has been maintaining itself for far longer than any health trend has existed, and it knows what to do when given the right conditions. The task is not to master complicated protocols, but to create the conditions that allow your own biology to do its work. If something in this exploration has stirred a memory of your own body's signals, or prompted a question you have not asked before, we would be honored to hear about it in the comments. And if you would like to continue exploring the wisdom of healthy aging, we invite you to explore other films in this library and to subscribe so that new wisdom finds its way to you. This is the Longevity Library. Listen, learn, and live longer.